So in this video, I will talk about how to create a UX flowchart. As a disclaimer, if so, this video is created for my University of Colorado Denver interactive design students. If you are not in my class, this content may not be relevant to the projects you're working on, whether as a student or in the industry. So feel free to continue watching, but some of these concepts and directions may not be relevant to the work that you're doing. Okay, now that we got that out the way for my students. So when I say UX flowchart, in my videos and in person, I will interchange it with a lot of different phrases. So I'll say UX flowchart, UX journey map, user task flow diagram, interaction flow diagram. There's a lot of words for it, but they kind of mostly, for our purposes, they mostly mean the same thing. Essentially, it is a visual diagram to explain how someone is using your digital product. I'm sure somewhere, someone much more smarter than me probably can explain the differences between all the different ways that we name it. I don't think the minutia, that level of specificity is that important this early on in your design career. What we want here, my goal, is to better understand how your app's going to work and like all the different parts of your app. So the other stuff is just noise at this point. I would just focus on getting your ideas out on paper, which is, I guess, your screen, not quite paper. So here is an example of a flowchart. Not very specific to a digital design app, but still a flowchart nonetheless. When I was still teaching in person, this was a really fun exercise to do as a class where we would create flowcharts of peanut butter, like how to create a peanut butter jelly sandwich. And like as a class, everyone would kind of like work on their own. And then at the end of class, someone would show or like explain this journey map and someone would pretend to make it and see how wildly different, the outputs were compared to the intended output, which was peanut butter jelly sandwich. So an example of this, some of the things I want you to take away is that there's a start and there's a finish. So start, finish. They're just rectangles at this point. They're just steps. Um, we have rectangles, which are typically like steps. And then we have these diamonds, which are decision points. So if I were to walk through this, so to start this flow, I would want to, I need to decide. Well, I have decided rather that I want to eat a peanut butter jelly sandwich. So what's next? Where this is a sample size of one. Remember, I created this example. So I select a bread. But which bread? So we're starting to get a lot of assumptions, like what kind of bread you like and like if you want it toasted or not. So select a bread, white or wheat. I go with wheat. And then I pull out 2 slices of bread. That's not always true though. Sometimes I pull out 3. If I'm very hungry and I do a triple decker, I do 3 slice PB&J. In this case, we're just going to focus on the 2 slice PB&J. From there, I select a jelly. And then there's like different types of jelly flavors I can choose. I get a knife and then I apply the chosen jelly to that 1 slice of bread. From there, I select a peanut butter, and like I just keep going through that flow. So I choose crunchy or creamy. I get a knife, I apply it to the slice of bread. I put the 2 pieces of bread together and I eat the sandwich, and we're done. So this is kind of like a fun, like non-academic example of a flowchart. Again, just for demonstration purposes. So the basic shapes that I showed you, you might have seen. They might have been too small, but here they are much larger. So the rectangle is a step. So essentially, it's like the different steps in the journey that you're mapping. So like if this were Google Maps, the step would be like take a left turn at Colfax, take a right turn onto Spear, take a left turn onto I-25 south to Colorado Springs. So that would be a step. Decision helps kind of determine if there's multiple paths that a user could go down on. So if we were to kind of continue with the Google Maps example, it's like at the very beginning when you route directions, like are you walking there? Are you on a bike? Are you taking public transit? Or are you driving? Because the output based on that input will be very different. So like if you selected bicycle, for example, in that example, they wouldn't route you onto the freeway. They might route you onto Santa Fe, for example, so that you can, take the road down instead of the highway. So the steps are really just like explaining, the different parts of the journey. The decision helps illustrate when there may be some sort of deviation of path. So when you're creating the UX flowchart, always start with a problem statement. That seems pretty obvious, but I'll just repeat it here. So start with a problem statement so you're not starting from scratch. So I've copied and pasted my problem statement here. So the general public needs a way to report non-life-threatening emergencies to the correct local agency so that their concerns are screened and addressed appropriately. So for my flowchart, I want to essentially explain this purple part. So how to report non-life-threatening emergencies to the correct local agency. So I am going to create my flowchart in Figma. I believe that is also the instruction of the assignment. However, if you weren't in this class and you wanted to create a flowchart, there's a lot of other tools you could use. Axure is one, AXURE. They have an educational program. Adobe XD can also create it. Illustrator, photo, like PowerPoint, Keynote, like really anything that allows you to like draw boxes, diamonds, and write text and draw arrows can help you create flowcharts. So let's open up this sample file. It's going to open this up here. Okay, so here is my UX problem statement again. These are some ideas I came up with in terms of features. So like what's the different functionality we could have. Let's skip that part for now. I'm going to erase this. But let's take a look at this problem statement. So general public needs a way to report non-life-threatening emergencies. So what I'm going to do is copy that. This is just my working process. I'm not prescribing how you have to work, by the way. This is just for demonstration purposes only. Okay. Ooh, there was more to that. Let's see. To the correct ways to report. There we go. So I went to the correct local agency. So how would I get started with this? So I'm creating this in Figma, so I'm actually in FigJam, if it matters to you. The functionality between Figma and FigJam are slightly different, but I'm using FigJam here for this flowchart. So I'm going to pull a square out. I'm going to turn it more into a rectangle. And remember, I wanted the starts and finishes here. So I'm just going to start with start because I don't know where this is going to finish yet. All right, so from a high level, how are they going to do this? Well, for the purposes of this class, you're designing an app. Would you use an app in real life? I don't know. But again, we're suspending some disbeliefs here, and we're going to create an app for this class. So you're going to open, okay, I'm going to not bolt this. So I'm going to, still bolting. All right. So open up E911 app. Okay. So what I'm saying is when you see an emergency, well, I'm actually not saying it. So witness or experience an emergency. So I'm going to type that. Okay. From there, you're going to open up E911 app. Okay. So someone's having an emergency. They know that there's an app that they open up, and then they open up the app. So what do they see when they first get to, what do they see when they tap on the icon? So I think the first thing that needs to be there is a way for them to report the emergency. So way to report the emergency. So I'm not prescribing yet what that looks like. We can do that in the next step. So ways to report the emergency. What are some ways that they can do it? So maybe maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's a form. Maybe they're kind of like live streaming or like, let's see, live streaming video. Maybe they're submitting a picture. Send a picture. So here are the different ways that they can, so I'm going to essentially connect these. Not the most beautiful. I would expect yours to look much nicer. Um, this is again just for demonstration purposes. All right. So those are different ways to report the emergency. Okay. Now, once they report the emergency, way to report the emergency. Okay, so then the emergency has been reported. So now what? So again, I'm not prescribing how you're doing your flowchart. I'm just thinking out loud so you know what it's like to go through this process. So when you report an emergency, you are either like still actively in the emergency or witnessing it, or you're just telling someone that this has happened and someone else has to deal with it. So in some cases, there will need to, so like how do I best communicate that? So I need to stay on the line to communicate with E911. Okay, so that's one scenario. And then the next scenario is I just report the emergency and I can disconnect. Okay, so I'm going to connect those. I'm going to move that down. Okay, so now you can kind of see that there is a decision, kind of like a decision tree here. So this one is saying that there needs to be a way. So user, because we don't want to say witness because they could be the victim. So I'll just say user. So user needs a way to report the emergency. After they report the emergency, they need a way to stay on the line to communicate with E911, or they can just report the emergency and then can disconnect. So from there, if they need to stay on the line, what does that look like? So do they need to continue looking? So like they need to maybe upload content. They might need to, like actually literally stay on the phone or kind of like maintain communication. So if it's an emergency, sometimes you can't always talk. So you may not need to stay, you might not stay on the phone, like actually like be on the phone. So I'm actually going to say maintain communications, and some of the ways that they could do it would be, let's see here, I'm going to copy that over. So some ways that they can maintain communication is through text message. Typos, so many typos. Text message, let's see here, text message, maybe like on the phone, see, on a video call. So those are just like some 3 easy ways for now. Again, kind of coming up with this on the fly, so not a lot of details. Not as much detail as I would expect from your assignment. Okay, so let's kind of zoom back out here. So we're starting to get a sense of this flowchart. So let's revisit the problem statement. You'll want to do that every once in a while. So the general public needs a way to report non-life-threatening emergencies to the correct local agency, so that their concerns are screened and addressed properly. Okay, so here we are. We're at the start. So someone is witnessing or experiencing an emergency. They open up the E911 app. User needs a way, typo, user needs a way to report the emergency. And that can be through a phone call, form, live streaming video, or sending a picture. There's 2 different ways that they would engage here with E911 app. They would either need to like stay on the line to communicate with them in real time, or they just need to report the emergency and disconnect. So there may be a decision here. This is almost like a desirability. Like, do they want to stay in communication or do they not? So what we could do is actually pipe them to a decision. So see, how does the user want to report? That doesn't all fit, so I'm going to make this bigger. There we go. Looks a little goofy, but you get the gist of it. So how does the user want to report? So there's our first decision. So they either need to communicate. So there's actually different words for this. So one is synchronous. So that is like I'm doing it in real time at the same time. This one is asynchronous. So I can tell you about it. I don't need to be there in real time to continue explaining it. I can just tell you what I saw and then take off, do my thing. So let's take a look here. So we're zooming out. So we have where they start, when they open up the app. Let me zoom in here. So like when they open up the app, their primary goal is to report the emergency. Here are all the ways someone can report the emergency. How do they want to report? Either synchronous or async. They can upload content to maintain communications. And like while they're on the line, they can text message, stay on the phone, or stay on the video call. So this is kind of the start of the flowchart. I wouldn't expect you to end here since you're designing this as a group. In my ideas that I came up with ahead of time, so in part of your project proposal, you will be listing out features that you want to work on and then assigning a design owner. So in this case, some of the feature ideas I had were like feature intake, emergency in progress, emergency follow-up, app onboarding, app GPS, and location features. So when you're creating, let's say you've already created your list of features, you've already assigned them to folks. What you'll need to do is kind of create that like initial structure of like the initial way that someone starts experiencing the app and like the different things that they go through. And then from there, you'll have these sub flow charts. So like details within this big flow chart of these individual features. And what that will do will essentially explain the scope of work that that designer is going to focus on during the semester. So each designer is in charge of designing 5 or more screens to help illustrate, that particular feature. So, the Pierce here, who's designing emergency intake, I would want to see at least 5 screens or like 5 parts of the experience. If they're not linear, then they're at least part of the experience that help explain the intake process. The next person, the emergency in progress. So like that's a specific set of screens that explains how someone is using the app while they're in an emergency. The next one is the follow-up. So what happens after the emergency is concluded. Another way to think about that would be emergency in progress would be the synchronous flow. The emergency follow-up would be the asynchronous flow. App onboarding can be like explaining how to use the app or how to use the different features. And then app GPS/location features. I think that's, in my opinion, I think that's a subset of in progress, but there's so much detail and work that's required that I've called it out as a separate feature or use case. So you would want to map all of those parts of the experience out. So I won't do that here in this example because that would just take a really long time. But what I can do is just take kind of a brief overview of this. So we would do start. So I would then do this first feature, so emergency intake. From there, you have either emergency in progress, or you have emergency follow-up. And then you will probably have app onboarding instructions. Now, I don't know if you actually want one for this app because it's an emergency. So like if you're witnessing like a car crash, you probably don't want to be interrupted with onboarding and instructions right away, but you may want it somewhere else accessible, maybe like in a settings menu or something to help explain. but I'm just going to put it here for now. we won't like critique exactly like where in the flow it needs to live. And then that okay, so the next one is the GPS and location features. So I think I actually think both of these have it. So I'm going to say like app GPS location features. Oops, typos. Features. Okay. And I say both of these have it, so they will both end up in the app in some form um, to be specified. They probably won't look the same, but both flows will have features, so someone else needs to take it. So um, what we'll do then is so this designer will have like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 3, etc. So like each feature will then kind of have like this own like sub journey, and it may not be as literal and linear as this. You may have other decision points. That's totally fine. I want you to spend this time really fleshing out all the different functionality your app's going to require to be helpful and to meet that, to address the problem that you've outlined in that problem statement. So just like you saw me do, every once in a while, zoom out, look at the problem statement, make sure you're staying on point, and then go back, to your flowchart. And if you create something like this and you need to refactor it, move things around, um, it's easy to do so in Figma. You don't have to redraw all the arrows. So like let's say all of this is no longer relevant and I actually want to, for some reason, move that over here and that over there. You can, in fact, just like reconnect them and the lines will reconnect and move to wherever you move that box. So undo that. All right, so I think that about wraps up what I'm looking for the UX flowchart. So again, to reiterate, look at your problem statement, begin designing the way that someone would use and experience this app, uh, identify what features would help support the app goals that you've identified, and then each of that, the functionality should be assigned to different designers, and those designers should be creating that specific flow, so that specific user flow. And it might not look linear like this. They might have a couple of decision trees or a couple of like circular processes. That's completely fine. The goal here is to get a really high level snapshot of the complexity of the app to make sure that that's a strong enough concept that 4 or 5 people can work on during the semester. But then also like this serves as a literal map to the design work that you need to do. So go ahead and meet with your groups and get started. And again, like I'm using Figma. You can use any tool, but Figma's a pretty easy one to get up and running once you get the licensing and all that stuff taken care of. So let me know if you have any questions or if you need any additional support on this.